Hello, everybody, and welcome to ZTV Live. Today is Wednesday, October 14th, 2020. I'm Susan Mulligan Fleischman, and I'm so glad to have you with us tonight. It's a great show tonight. We have the honor of having Diane Canney, who's the founder of the COVID-19 U.S. Honor Quilt program. And it's a fascinating program, a wonderful endeavor that she's undertaken, and she's going to be on in just 1 second. I just want to remind everybody that we are again tonight broadcasting or streaming over YouTube, and there is a place to put comments on the YouTube, so please, if you want to say hello. Oh, Mary Wadlin, hello, thank you for watching. Mary, the grand poobah of the Zebra Press Empire, Mary Wadlin said hello, which is fantastic. So any comments, if anybody wants to say hello, please go ahead and do that in the YouTube comment section. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Diane Canney on. Diane, hello, welcome to ZTV Live.
Hello, this is an honor and a privilege to be on ZTV. So I just admire your organization, your paper, and I'm just so happy to be here tonight.
Oh, thank you so much. We are, I thank you for your kind words, and we are thrilled to have you on. And this project that you're doing is exactly why we love to cover the good news around here, because it's so uplifting, and especially, in stressful times that we're living in, between the pandemic and the election and everything going on, and economy, there's a lot of stress in the world, and something like your program and project really helps to alleviate some of that. There was a great video. I'm going to play that, Diane, real quick, and then we're going to come back and chat some more. But to the viewers, this is a wonderful, quick little 1-minute video that really, I think, beautifully encompasses Diane's program. So watch it, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. That was such a beautifully shot and produced video. It really, I think, beautifully tells the story of your whole quilt project. Can you let's start at the beginning. What prompted this?
As you were talking about, we live in a time of uncertainty, and it's kind of a funny story with my mother. So some of you in the audience may know my mother is a very sassy 95-year-old senior citizen. She lives in South Florida, and during this pandemic, as all of us have the challenge, we can't connect with our loved ones. We are physically separated by thousands of miles. So I was asking her what she'd like, and I sent her many things. Mother, what can I do for your birthday? And one of her comments was, I'd like you to do something, Diane, that brings, that helps the nation, makes people feel better. And I said, oh, great, Mom, you could have asked for something difficult like a
I was going to say, that's a tall order.
Yes, that's a tall order. But my mother, to be fair, my mother has always been extraordinarily community-minded, and it's one of the great gifts that she's given to me is to do the same. And for those in the audience who may not know that, and this is not a bragging statement, I mean, my mother, we never had much money, and I took care of my mom when we got a divorce, so I've been sort of the person looking after her. So when, like many of us, when your mother wants something, I do whatever I can to make that happen.
Sure.
So one of the things with this time of uncertainty is we decided to do, I thought, Mom, what kind of project could we do that would be COVID safe, that is affordable, historical, and transportable? And we both had been thinking, my mother at 95 has lived through, when you think of that generation, she's lived through the polio issue, the smallpox crisis, wars, the Depression, and yet she's never lived through anything like this. Which really speaks volume for the crisis that we're in.
Right.
So we both had familiar with the AIDS, which was a virus itself. So the AIDS Quilt project was started by Cleve Jones, And it was an example of one individual, not a powerful person, not a political person, who just decided to try to bring attention to finding therapeutic techniques, treatments for this disease. And it took decades. But this man now was 25 and essentially very sick from AIDS. He is now 69, I think largely due to this tremendous outreach from the population across the country to create the AIDS quilt. Interestingly, the current COVID crisis and the number of people affected far exceeds, we know, wars. And in fact, we could not make all those AIDS quilt panels that were 3 by 6 feet, the size of a coffin. It would be enormous. So instead, I thought, why don't we use a small, the final size is 10 by 10 inches. It's actually a 10.5 by 10.5 inch square that we start with, and it can be fabric or digital. And we thought that was a manageable size to let people express themselves in a medium, and then we could take these panels and create quilts from them to use as public displays. And the interesting part from both my mother and I is that quilts have been used historically for hundreds of years in America. For those who may not know, we actually have a winery named 50 West. It's on Route 50, and you may not know that's the longest road still across America. It connects where George Washington surveyed near the White House all the way to California, and that was a westward migration path. Along that journey, when you picture families or mothers, if children were lost or people died, they were actually wrapped in quilts as a way of providing comfort, and then their final resting was in that. So this idea of this unusual environment where we're extremely isolated and secluded from any warmth and comfort, that idea of the fabric of America seemed so apropos and so feasible in a very short time. So we began with, my mother started with her own square, and then I started to do a call to artists. One of the wonderful things when this is a very huge sounding task, so I wanted to do it in very measurable ways. So I started with some of these, what the video you all just showed our audience is a sip and sketch event. So you don't have to have any artistic skills. You don't have to have any quilting skills. The name quilt sort of intimidates some people. You just have to have a message that you want to share. So I consider this a portable art therapy in a time when many people really could use therapy. And it's a way of getting a lot of emotions, particularly in children and the senior citizens. The people, especially in the senior citizens, in particular minority groups, are very susceptible and are higher risk. And it's just an interesting way, I thought, to try to, the mission statement for this is to honor frontline workers. And when we think of frontline workers, it's those amazing doctors and nurses and people working in the research area, as well as the people who work in the grocery stores, the people delivering our packages. Think of the sanitation workers. So they are doing the same job and not getting any additional pay and they're actually risking their lives. And to me, if let's say we have a vaccine tomorrow, I think it's important to capture this unusual time we're living in as a historical time capsule. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've done with a quilt is I've wanted to create visuals, particularly the faces of COVID. In fact, we call it a portrait of resilience, because America is known for its tremendous innovation and, I would like to think, resiliency. People like my mother endured, they kind of pulled themselves up by their boots and they got back in the game. And like many of the people out there, I'm sure all of us have gone from shock, great concern, feeling that this should have ended, I thought, in a few months so we could return back to being normal. And part of my reason for doing this with my mother is I may not see my mother. I hate to think of that, but as we get older and we're so far apart, if my mother needed me, I really couldn't take care of her. So it's the idea of how do you get Americans to show gratitude to these frontline workers that we all depend upon more than ever, so that I was very inspired, I'm sure many people were, when the New York City had its major crisis. You saw all those people in the skyscrapers banging on pots, and the workers reading some of the comments from the nurses and doctors going to work. It brought tears to their eyes.
At 7 p.m. every evening. Yep, at the shift change.
So since that, I live in Northern Virginia. I don't hear any pan. I don't see any expression of our gratitude so that they even know that we care. It's one thing in a large urban environment, but most of us in the Northern Virginia we live in suburbia or in downtown DC. You don't see that way of telling them, good job, hang in there, we know you're working hard for us. So I was very motivated to do something that would show our gratitude on that area. And secondarily is I don't know for all you know, if you get sick from COVID, in fact, we put some of my brochures that I brought with me, we put some of these, actually that's our slogan, together we will heal. So the idea of putting
on so many levels. That's a wonderful slogan.
So together we will heal. In a nation that united we stand, divided we fall. Think of our forefathers. These are very strong. Think of Abraham Lincoln, how we would assess the situation we're in now. So you can't make a quilt of individual pieces, and if they all look alike, it's a very boring quilt. So the idea of having people from all over the country of different ages, artistic ability, it makes it a very interesting mosaic of kind of the flavor of America in one cloth piece. So I found that very interesting to try to weigh to whatever political parties people are in, or ages, or geographic locations, we are all experiencing the COVID crisis together.
Sure.
In this moment in history, we are together on this. And why not represent that in a very tangible way, so that my personal goal is I'd love to have this in the Smithsonian, the Portrait Gallery, so that we don't forget. And then those who are affected or died, it's a very strange time that, right now if you get sick with COVID, you are very isolated. So You can't be comforted by your family. You can't be near a family member. And
it's probably the hardest part about all of it, honestly.
I agree.
For those people who contracted, if it's an elderly patient and it's your mother or your father and you can't be with them, I just think that's tragic.
And you can't be, as we all know, their health advocate. Most of us understand now with the busyness of the medicine industry, and particularly under COVID, you'd almost want to be there to ensure that they're cared for. So, and if you pass away from COVID, you can't have a proper funeral because you can't gather a large group. So in our whole nation, we don't have an appropriate grieving process. So it's almost like an automatic pilot mode. And one of the things I wanted to do was, I love doing portraits. I wanted to do faces of people so that their families, they're not just like a statistic out there. They are an individual with a wonderful story that needs to be saved. So that was part of my motivation. And I had read the New York Times had done a one-page front story in the midst of their crisis, and it was very moving. I don't know if anyone has seen that page, but it was thousands of names, and they had, combed all of these obituaries. And it was a name, and it was a small comment, like, my favorite uncle who had the best laugh, or, he loved tinkering on cars. And, it was just something that made that name resonate with you more. And I thought, what a wonderful thing I could do as an artist. I'm very fortunate to have, be able to have two wineries and wonderful people that are very supportive. For years in my wineries, my slogan has been great wine for the greater good. So philanthropy has always been a very big part of that. And this is such a nice way of connecting that, not to increase revenue or, show off my winery, but more as here are some wonderful people. And we have a COVID safe environment, and here's a way that they could participate in something very simple.
Right. Yep. I'm going to cycle through some of the photographs now while you're describing it happened. And before, you mentioned that you wanted this in the Smithsonian, but you were already pretty close to the Smithsonian with all of this, weren't you?
Yes, I was very excited this last weekend, and it's on. We were on the. We actually were able to get a permit to be right in the center of the National Mall, so just next to the Smithsonian stop. So we had, for those who don't know, we in order to find a way to, unlike the AIDS quilt where they were placed along the ground, in a COVID environment, I was concerned that people would be gathering too close together in order to appreciate the individual artwork. So I, one night, woke up and just thought, hope. So I thought, why don't we use 4 simple letters, make them look like the Hollywood Hills sign, those big white letters that are so, we were also going to release our project in this amazing Loudon Arts Film Festival. And they were wonderful to take this project on with me, with Loudon Arts, and let us make these large letters. And then we covered them by the end of the event with all these panels received from hundreds of people, children, senior citizens, and the general public. So that was, the word hope seemed very simple, and it was very interesting to see people's reaction to that. So we went from starting local, bringing hope to local communities, Percival, to Middleburg. And this weekend we were on the National Mall. So I wanted to bring hope to Washington, D.C. in a very challenging time during this pandemic. And it was amazing with that area and letting the press know about that. We had full coverage by not only NBC News, WTOP ran a story all day long, and people would walk up saying, my wife said I had to come here. We heard about hope, which, after it's a concept, and how my mother and I have worked, on phone calls, and my mother Zooms all the time. So that's really amazing for a 95-year-old. She Zooms with me. And actually having somebody utter those words back to me was one of the most powerful moments. And so that was really exciting to be on the National Mall. We had wonderful coverage. And from that, it's really, I think, brought our, this is now a national program. It took us from that tipping point of being a concept to being a campaign, a movement, in a very positive way, a movement for hope in America.
It really is. I just went through, as you were describing all of that, I went through all of those pictures, and it's just so impactful. And what a great, the Hollywood sign was a wonderful kind of, symbol to emulate, because it starts with the same letters, but it really is,
Yes.
is that impactful, and it feels big like that. And it does feel, and that was, and hope. I mean, that's what we all have to have. It's what
Yes.
gets us through this. It's what gets us through these days.
Oh, well, I think it's very, I'm sure, there have been times when it seemed rather hopeless, and I think many of us felt sort of abandoned. We were looking for kind of a beacon of light and truth that said, everything's going to be okay, that where's the Wizard of Oz someplace, to say that we're, and even there is really, in some things where you have an invisible enemy, and those frontline workers are the soldiers, it must be incredibly challenging for all of us to be there every day. So it takes a lot of personal stamina and saying, instead of feeling hopeless, and why don't we do something? And I can't tell you the difference it has made for my life, and hopefully for my volunteers, and certainly my mother's life. When you get involved in something, and this happens to be my project, but there's so many things many of us could do, that you don't have to be exposed to COVID. You could do them online through Zoom, but there's something that is wonderful, I think, for people. Because when you get so turned on yourself and what's negative and what's wrong with your life, when you turn it outward, like, well, what can I do to make it better? How can I improve the situation in my own way? Maybe it's called the paying forward. My husband and I have been very lucky to be able to travel to different parts of the world. We're trying to save endangered, people and animals. But I've been to some really very, very poor places in India and in Vietnam, and it wasn't the wealthy people, that were content. I mean, just villagers would hand me things that just as a way of showing a connection without needing anything back. So that's really the part of our human connection that I think especially during COVID, it's almost been a reset button where we're almost living back in an earlier time when many of us are putting gardens in, and people are learning how to make sourdough bread at night. How many people, you actually have more hours in a day because we're not commuting. So it's a chance to be reflecting on what would I like to try to learn and do. And for me, I've always wanted to paint more, and I've always wanted to kind of do more portraits that express what's happening in people's lives, kind of looking into those eyes to see into their souls. Mm-hmm. And those are some of the pictures I have. And I also am doing, I wanted to do more of these memorial quilts, and I started combing, it's rather morbid, obituaries, and that's when I discovered that there is a negative stigma that's about dying of COVID that I think is unfair to people. So people aren't even putting that in obituaries as though it's their fault. So to even be able to appropriately ask a person, I would like to help your family grieve, or encourage them to make their own quilt together where they have cousins in New Jersey and they can say, send, Uncle Joe's buttons or his pin from the military, and let's make something together across the country. You can connect emotionally, and then we kind of make something, whether they send it to me or they take a photo of it. They're then providing a small memorial panel for someone that they love to help them grieve appropriately.
That's really beautiful, and I believe that you're working on. That's right there. I think next to you on the couch. Can you talk to that?
Yes, one of my wonderful, I also have hired this amazing team, a wonderful marketing person, Katie and Diane Murphy. I've got some amazing people who've joined in. I mean, that's also been very enriching. But this is a friend of their friends. This is a gentleman whose name is Thomas Fields, who was, his wife, his fiance lives in Virginia Beach. Unfortunately, at the age of 32, very early on in the COVID crisis, he was COVID positive, and he also was a diabetic. And this is a man that wanted to change the world. He had a chef business going, a giant of a man, 6'5", with a heart of a lion. So, and he died in the hallway of a hospital in a matter of days. He leaves behind a 5-year-old son and a fiancée, Jasmine, who misses him very much. And I decided to start doing his portrait. And I took it to the National Mall. I just felt like I needed to do it that day. Mm-hmm. And now I'm working with his family on adding some elements. You know what? I mean, if I had a 3-dimensional pin, I would add it here. So right. I want to tell his life.
It's a beautiful, that's a beautiful work, Diane. That's really a beautiful likeness of him.
And I haven't finished it yet because I want to make sure that this is, to the family, this reminds them what was his favorite color shirt. Were there, some expressions there's a logo they've given me. I think it's called Sweet Science Chef. So I'm going, and that will give his son, I'm hoping, and his fiance something to hold on to so that we don't just forget him.
Yes,
so that's
absolutely.
one of my projects.
That is really beautiful. And you have another aspect of the project coming up this weekend, right?
Well, yes, this weekend. So one of the things, the winery and I, we've always supported breast cancer research. So very targeted.
It's National Breast Cancer Month, right?
It's National Breast Cancer Month. And years ago, one of our customers and friends passed away. So we made a promise that I would do something to help other women who are fighting, or not just people, not just women. So we created a sparkling wine and rosés in honor of the women who are in for the fight the next day. So we are going to be featuring our rosés and our panels and the hope letters. We're bringing hope to Lovettsville. We're going to have there's going to be probably 200 women.
And that's on Saturday. Uh-huh.
That's on Saturday, and it's from 10 o'clock until 6. It's in Lovettsville. You can't miss these large, big hope letters. Our goal is to cover them with pink panels or panels made by these women so that this population, like many who have chronic illnesses, are very susceptible. When you're immune suppressed, it's a very challenging environment to get health care now.
Yes.
So we're going to even add that other element, and we want to incorporate in our future quilts that we have them included. And we're going to add also a white, just a white panel in some of the quilts that represents those who are not counted, who are never tested, that probably died of COVID. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I want to have some respect for the people that we know may have died of the disease, but because of how fast this moved and how the lack of getting testing out there because of the scope of this, that they probably succumbed to the disease as well. Mm. So I also have some more. I mean, there's another memorial. This is by, we have quilts here. I have the quilt panel being fabricated, but here are 2 other honor quilts. I mean, this gentleman I was told, Nicholas, was from the Ukraine, had a PhD, came to America. And this wonderful gentleman, Arthur Miller, also we were honoring him and his loss. So it's not a good way to, it's not an easy disease to deal with. So again, for some of these folks who passed away, this provides a beautiful way of expressing a memorial to them.
Oh, definitely. It's such a it's such a personal and yet community. It's so intimate and yet a shared.
Yes.
It really covers so many bases. This project, I can see why you're so passionate about it, and it's just a wonderful, beautiful expression.
Well, it's really, and it's funny. I've run into some wonderful people, Kaylee and Betsy and Owen, and some wonderful people on my team that I wouldn't have stumbled upon in a normal way. Mm-hmm. And I think for other people, finding like-minded people who have, maybe that's another hobby they enjoy. It could be photography. But I think that's another way, since we can't connect physically, I think it's important for people to find something that they feel passionate about. I mean, I went from being kind of depressed about everything, like many of us, to saying, gee, I have a purpose, and I can see my mother's attitude, and my mother, she's pretty amazing. She worked until she was 84, and she's cornered, and my mother lives in the retirement community. She's cornered every person with a pulse, I've told her, that can possibly draw or sketch, and she's actually gotten them to participate. And I have even a gentleman working with her actually worked for Walt Disney, Norman Rockwell, and Charles Schultz.
Oh, my goodness.
So imagine one, and he's so humble. He'll say he was lucky. So he's 92, and he just got out of the hospital. He has made at least 4 panels, and I've told him he's my senior creative art director. And I'm sending him Ensure every day. I said, I've got to muscle you up because you're the head of this unit. And I just called him today, and their panels were on the National Mall. So I took pictures for them because they can't even leave their room now.
Right.
So and one of
But
the
they feel like they did. They feel like they were,
yes.
On the National Mall. That's fantastic.
Well, and they're going to be again. To tell your viewers, in addition to getting on the National Mall, our next stop is going to be on the 24th. Is the Jefferson Memorial. It should be beautiful in October. We're going to be there all day. And I'm working and lobbying the Park Service to allow me to stay overnight there, light those hope letters. They kind of glow at night. And I'd like to have them placed in front of the Lincoln Memorial and do a vigil there, a sunset vigil into the evening. And then have
and that's next Saturday. Saturday,
no,
October?
That's the 24th. So it'd be a week from this coming Saturday. So we're still working on that. So I think when I call, they all sort of scamper there because I think they sense my urgency and how I believe this is so important to have it there to help the nation heal.
I agree. I think it's a wonderful message, and I think it's great to be in the nation's capital, for everybody to see. So
an honor.
We will definitely come by and see you while you're there. So yeah. And if somebody is watching this and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to paint a square, I want to do it, or I want to donate, what's the best way that they can do that?
You can go to our website, which was on your screen earlier, www.COVID-19 U.S. honorquilt.org, and you can
all
go
one word.
All one word, and I think it's lowercase. So you can go to the template area. But it's really just, as I said, a simple 10.5-inch square. You can use appliques, you can paste and glue. You do not have to sew anything. In fact, I can show you let me show you some simple examples. I have some children as young as, 3rd graders. So a lot of these panels are just, look how cute. Okay, so they have a little bling here. So, and just with a simple message. One of my, and this is by.
And it's a message of hope.
And here's a 4-year-old. So, so it's really interesting how children, now we didn't give them any guidance. So this is from their hearts. And then what's really cute, they hold it up like they just created the Mona Lisa. So you also see those wonderful. Yes, they did. And one of my favorites, one of the wonderful parts, one of my team members, one of my employees, Sharon, is a single mom with 4 kids, and they're just amazing. So they're one of my assembly units and teams. So it's a great, great project for kids to do at home with their families. Here moms are trapped. What are we going to do with the kids? And when I do this at the winery, it's like moths to a flame. And what comes out of these children, look at this amazing one that was done by Sharon's daughter. This is by Kaylee.
I love that.
Where did she get these ideas from? So not all heroes wear capes. And I love this one. We're going to have this one on our
very quilts. Well drawn as well.
Well, she's 13.
Yeah.
So and then you compare that to I have a wonderful artist, Rusty Boyle, who's a phenomenal portrait painter who was generous enough to include this. Look at her, Dr. Fauci. So just having even the two of them together, I guess I can manage this, guys, is just beautiful. And so you have the highly sophisticated professional, and you just have a child, expression from the heart.
Wow, that's great.
So let me show you. Can I show you a few more?
Yes, but we have a question. There? Can you tell us more about the display at the Delray Artisans?
Oh yes, the Delray Art. So when we left the National Mall,
thank you for your question.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we were so excited to have taken them to this beautiful area of Alexandria, the Delray area, for the annual Art on the Avenue. There's a wonderful gallery there full of art, and our giant hope letters are lined up across the fence. We're going to be lighting them at night, and we're asking the community to please create panels, make your 10-inch squares, 10.5-inch squares, and we'll put them there with your messages. And they'll be taking those off and adding them into quilts. So the goal is to build this project in the Delray area. And we brought hope to Alexandria. And what a
Yay.
wonderful, and there's some great restaurants, guys. So I think it's worth the trip if you haven't been there. It's a very fun, chic, lots of interesting old architecture. So
Oh yeah,
that's
Delray
where,
is great. In fact, a lot of our viewers live in Delray, and
oh,
we
oh,
we're up there a lot. I love Delray. It's one of my
so
favorite parts
okay.
of the city.
I'm kind of jealous, guys. I think it's a great place to live, and what a beautiful place. So now you have the Hope letters from the National Mall sitting there, and they will be there for at least a few months until through the holidays. So that's a very special place. We feel very honored to have arrived and have them there. They're very visible. And actually, we've actually put the QR codes on that sign there. So if you drive by, you can just get our website by even taking a
Terrific.
photo.
And that's even better. Wonderful. We're beginning
Yes,
to
right.
we're beginning to run out of time, but show us another couple of those squares.
Let
I
me
just
show
love
you a
them.
couple. Yes, this is one of my favorite. My friend, watercolorist Alex Carr, that she's missing Grandma. I thought it was on so many levels. Is Grandma gone? Is it that we have to mail Grandma? So I just think that's a very interesting, how artists come up with beautiful solutions.
Yes.
And one of my favorite young men was doing, so here's an example of this, an 8-year-old child who now believes that under COVID, his whole world is through Zoom.
Yeah.
So his soldiers, his doctors, the firemen, it's almost kind of a sad, interesting and sad social statement that his view of the world is, this is his world, it's Zoom. That's probably how he sees his grandma. That's probably how he sees his doctor. So what an interesting sociological aspect of that.
Yes, no kidding.
Like this. And then I had another young man make the World Trade Towers. I mean, now this child is too young to have lived through that experience. So it's so how interesting that it must have been so traumatic for his family that he felt the need, and that's all he wanted to do. When I said first responder, he said World Trade Towers.
Wow, interesting.
And my last favorite one, guys, by a little teeny person, is, and you can see they must love their vet. So they even drew their little cats on the corner.
They did.
Okay, so see, you don't need, look how powerful that is.
Yes.
And how simple and sweet. So it doesn't matter if you did this when you're 5 or if you're 95, it's still as powerful.
Right. And it's just from the heart, as you said. And so people can actually do a physical cloth 10.5-inch square, or they can also do it digital.
Right.
So they would just make and any kind of a program or take a picture of something and send it to you.
And they could take a photo. It could even be a beautiful, we have beautiful ones that just say, it could be a beautiful setting or your favorite pond saying, let's not forget those lost to COVID. And that's just, you can do that with a Sharpie.
Right.
So it's not, you may have your favorite picture of a beautiful, maybe it's a deer in the lawn or something. It's just something very calming and beautiful. And then we can take a digital file and then we can print on fabric so that we then can assemble these. This is one that's printed on fabric. This is a digital one. So
I see.
So you can see this is printed on fabric.
Yes.
And so the quilters, it's really 10 inches because we need to have that seam allowance.
Right.
So as long as you make it, in fact, 11 inches is probably a safer size. So we can take your digital file and your digital art, and especially for young folks, teenagers, college kids, we think this is a great project for universities, middle schools and colleges now. It's be a great one to do because it doesn't, I'm not raising any money yet, so this is just something that's pretty, I would think, sincere and just to bring hope.
And as like you said, just to bring hope, and it's something that everybody can do. Diane, thank you so much. I wish we could bottle up your energy and your enthusiasm and give it to everybody, but I think some of it is emanated out to the people who are watching this, and hopefully they'll share that with their friends. And I encourage everybody to, if you're so inclined, to go ahead and add to this wonderful U.S. Honor Quilt. And I love the name, the U.S. Honor Quilt, because it's hope and honor, and together we will heal. Exactly.
Yes.
Diane Canney, thank you so much. And
Thank
we
you.
will be looking for you this weekend, and certainly we'll look for you on the event on the 24th as well.
Thanks so much. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
appreciate your
It's a
time. Sure
pleasure.
thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that's going to do it for tonight's episode of ZTV Live. Gosh, what a great program that is. I just really love it. So stay tuned to thezebra.org and on our Facebook page for updates from Diane's program. Tomorrow night, it's the Virginia Amos Show, and Virginia is welcoming Angela Maniglia Turner, who's the elections officer for the city of Alexandria. Very timely interview, so be sure to tune in and get the word on the status of what's going on. And next week we will have all of our other shows as well. I don't have the lineup right in front of me right now. Sorry, but it's going to be a great week next week. And until then, until we meet again, remember as much as you can to be the good news in someone's life.